So hi everybody, I am Christy Craig. I am the publisher here at Hidden Timber Books. We're a very tiny press in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And I want to welcome you today to another of our small press author reading events. This series has been a lot of fun. If you're new to this series, we've been doing it for a little over a year now. It initially started when everything shut down for COVID, but it's turned into a really great opportunity to build community, to introduce writers and authors to readers all across the country. So I'm really happy that you are here today. It's going to be a great conversation. So I noticed this book right away, immediately from the cover. I was very excited about it. It's such a beautiful cover. It's a great collection, Take a Stand, Art Against Hate. And we are going to be talking with Anna Bálint today. And she's one of the co-editors of the anthology. Phoebe, oh gosh, we're talking about last names. So Phoebe Boucher is here as well. She's another editor at Raven Chronicles Press, and so she may join our conversation throughout the hour. But just to give you a little bit of information about Anna Bálint is a London-born, Seattle-based poet, writer, editor, and cultural activist of East European descent. She has many editorial credits to her name under Raven Chronicles Press, and her own work is published as a collection of short fiction entitled Horse Thief from Curbstone Press. She is a longtime teacher of creative writing. She currently teaches adults in recovery from trauma, addiction, mental illness, and homelessness at Seattle's Recovery Cafe, where she founded Safe Place Writing Circle. And I want to just introduce you to the book very, very briefly with one quote that's in the epigraph in the very beginning, and then I will pass the baton to Anna. In the very beginning, there's several different quotes, and the one I really appreciate most is the one from Joy Harjo. She says, "All acts of kindness are lights in the war for justice." And I think that speaks well to this book. It is full of wonderful pieces, powerful pieces, some that are quietly so and some that are a little more upfront and loudly spoken for good reason. But all of it coming together is just a great way to look at activism and resistance. So Anna, thank you so much for being here. I will pass the baton to you, and I would love to hear a little bit about you, who you are, and how you came to be involved in this project.
I came to be involved in this project because of what was going on in the world more than anything. And, I and many, many people feeling a sense of urgency to really address what was happening in our society in terms of just the amount of hate that was being generated. And not that hate was new, it goes back to this country's very beginnings, but it was on the increase and in horrifying ways and great speed. And so that was sort of like my motivation for wanting to do such a book. In terms of myself, it's also that as a writer in the last several years now, I've sort of reached a point, or I hope I'm emerging from it, where my own creative process has been pretty sort of jammed up as a result of a whole extended period of trauma that I went through that seems to have had the effect of making me feel that nothing of my own words is good enough, or it could be potentially dangerous and used against me, and all sorts of things that don't exactly help the creative process. But that doesn't, luckily and joyfully, does not interfere with me as an editor or a teacher. And so I've been concentrating more on, well, if I can't get my own voice out right now, I can sure make use of helping get other voices out into the world. So
yeah, I love that. I think that's so important. And because during this time it has been difficult for a lot of people to create art. And I think as we were meeting before the other day, we talked about that sometimes just creating something feels like you are still a part of that process and bringing joy and light to the ways that art can help us survive certain kinds of situations. So I think it's really important, and I feel the same way. If I'm not able to produce my own writing, I love sharing the work of others, which is another reason why this series has been such a great opportunity and a really fun event.
Can I
Um,
can I just
yeah,
add something? Actually, I just thought,
yeah,
because for me too, it's always been a thing that my own creative process I see as a way to contribute to social change. The things that I write about, stories that need to be told, stories that are often unheard. And I feel, and that spills over again into, of course, a book like this, and also the kind of teaching I do, where this thing about, well, if there is going to be change, these voices, these stories, these ideas, these images are part of helping that come into being.
yeah. And maybe it would be great to hear a little bit about um, your work as a teacher at the Recovery Cafe, because I know some of that work ended up in the anthology as well. So let's start there. Would
But
you tell us a little bit about that, the cafe and the writing circle and the work that you do and the people that you meet?
well, yes, I mean, I started the writing circle, um, what is it, 9 years ago now. And I sort of knew when I walked in Recovery Cafe that this was a place that I'd sort of been searching for, even if I didn't consciously know it, and where it would be possible to set up this class to foster writers who didn't usually get a chance for their voices to be heard because society, in one way or another, sort of kicked them to the curb, or they were just sort of not seen, not heard. And so that has been absolutely wonderful. We did a book a few years ago that's being re-released, also with Raven Chronicles, called Words from the Cafe. But it also, the fact that we have a writer from Safe Place Writing Circle included in this anthology is also part of what we really wanted to do with this anthology, which is not just have sort of writers who were established in one way or another as writers. So in these pages, you find everything from this piece by, somebody who is in Safe Place Writing Circle, another piece by a student of mine from many years ago, actually at El Centro de la Raza here in Seattle, who was 18 when she wrote it. That's in here. All the way up to Jericho Brown, who just won the Pulitzer Prize. And of course, many established and notable writers and also levels in between. And alongside that, people who are writing out of the direct experience of sort of like this country as a whole, from the point of view of ethnicity, race, socioeconomics, gender, you name it. It's sort of like it's in these pages. Unfortunately, we won't be able to, I'm going to read some pieces today, but we won't be able to sort of sample every voice, but they're in here. So, but maybe I'll just start actually with this piece, share this piece that came out of Recovery Cafe, if I can find the page that she is on. And this person had come off of, her name's Sarah Beckman, and she came to the cafe and to Safe Place Writing Circle after 6.5 years spent on the streets, sleeping on the streets.
Okay.
And
Anna, just before you start, is there an image that you would like to share with that?
oh yes, there is. Thank you for reminding me. It's Boy, page 104. And I should mention that I picked this image, which is of a person experiencing homelessness on the streets of Seattle. But the person who took this image, Angela Ibarra, is Angel Ibarra rather, was also a student at Safe Place Writing Circle. And she has sort of moved on to other things, and she does a lot of photography too. So this is her image and Sarah's words. And I'm reading from Vignettes of Homelessness, which has got 3 sections to it, and I'm just going to read the last one, which is called Sleep. Finding a really good sleep spot is critical. Scott and I find a great doorway in front of a veterinary clinic. Unknowingly, this is the last doorway we will sleep in. We need to wake up at 6 a.m. so as to be up and out before staff comes to open the clinic. But today is different. The woman we believe to be the owner is here, and she's early. We feel guilt and shame for blocking her door with the cardboard we put down for warmth and cushion, plus all the bags. Why do I insist on carrying so much? The weight is messing up my back. A cement bed plus my overwhelming need to be prepared, hence all the bags, equals lumbar muscle spasms. I wonder what the vet thinks of us, and I desperately want to explain our situation. Good morning. I've been awake and clean and I've been clean and sober for 6 months now. Sorry about still being here, but we were kept awake all night by our drunk neighbor in the next doorway. We won't have time to clean up other people's garbage before we leave today. I'm sorry. But of course, I don't say anything. She doesn't want to hear it. She wants to open her clinic. Regardless of the work Scott and I are doing on ourselves, we're still invading her space. During 6.5 years of living on the street, I never got busted for peeing in public, and I never got busted for drinking in public. I am criminally trespassed from Seattle Center for an entire month, but that's another story for another day. One thing's for sure. If I ever do get busted by the cops, my hope is it won't be for something asinine or petty, like trying to stay warm or catch some sleep. Now, every day I work on becoming a better person, and someday I will be able to explain my situation, tell my story. Maybe then the vet will understand.
Thank you for reading that. I love that line. I was just gonna say it one more time, the one about regardless of the work we are doing for ourselves, we are still, I forgot what it was, blocking the doorway, blocking the street.
Yeah, we're still invading her space.
We're still invading her space. And boy, that's just perfect. I think it, it's another reason why I think this anthology is so important, because like you were saying, it doesn't include only a certain caliber of artist. It's everyone. And so many times, no matter who we are, we question whether we really have anything important to say, like you were talking about, and how to get our voice out there anyway. And so that's a wonderful example of bringing someone who probably never thought they were really much of an artist, but had something really important to share, and giving that to us as readers.
And there's a flip side to that too, which is what it means for the reader, because there are so many stereotypes out there in society of what a homeless person is, what they look like, how they behave. And I don't think the idea of someone being really concerned for the person whose doorway they're sleeping in, or being polite, thoughtful, the fact that people are working on themselves, that, all these different things, sort of like, and how hard it is to have to put a piece of cardboard down under you and have lumbar troubles. So it's sort of, it helps break down the stereotypes too. And I think that's important.
Yes, very much so. I want to let everyone know that Phoebe is placing the biographies of the artists in the chat, so you can read a little bit more about who the writer is and who the artist is. And the next thing I wanted to ask you about, Anna, is the structure of the book. In talking about the continuum of artists that are in the anthology, how did you and the other editors decide the way you wanted to put the work in order? What became important for you in doing so?
Well, that was, I think, the most challenging part. Once we had, we had a huge stack of work that we know we want to include, but we're from there, And one of the things we were very clear about, though, from the get was that we did not want this in any way to be limited to or possibly perceived as just sort of an anti-Trump anthology, that things had come to a certain point under Trump, but the roots of everything way preceded him. And there were many, many problems that way preceded him and continue after. And so we wanted to have that sense of the history of this country and some of the sort of origins of the different problems that we have to deal with. And most fundamentally, that meant sort of going back in some way to the earliest days of US history and finding a way to address its roots in colonialism, slavery, and the white supremacy. And so that sort of led us to the legacy section, which is sort of really dealing with history. And I am, in a moment, I'd like to read the opening poem, because it became the opening poem because I think it sort of really anchors not only how things are rooted in the past, but the connection of the past to the present and to the moment and times we're living in now. And that's another thing that was important for us that kind of helped determine the different sections in the order, was that sense of things not being walled off from one another. History is not walled off from the present. And then the next section, We Are Here, is actually the section that Sarah's piece that I just read is in, where it sort of really puts out there, when we're talking about our society, we need to look at all of it. And here are some of the people that are often not included or quote unquote seen or heard. And then the next section, the why, is all the time there's sort of a grappling with, what are the underpinnings of all this? Why does this happen? For some people it was just Trump. It was as simple as that. Well, no, it's not as simple as that. But there's no one answer in here. You've got pieces that address this sort of underpinnings and question of why in a variety of different ways. And they all have something to offer. The next section then comes into evidence, which is the longest section, which is sort of predictably so, where it sort of really does deal with sort of like holding a mirror up to much of what we've been dealing with, particularly how it's intensified over the last 4 or 5 years. And then the last section, resistance, this was another thing that was very important to us, is that this anthology, even though it takes us into some dark and some painful places, it also needed to contain the element of humor at different points, which it does, but leave us and take us to hope and the possibility of change. Not the inevitability of that, because we have work to do, but that possibility is there, and there's evidence of change and around us. So that's sort of the last section deals with that. But maybe I should read Tanaya Winder's poem now.
Yep.
This is the very first poem in the book. And we have an image that goes with it. The actual cover of the book that Christy held up is taken from this mural that's on the side of a building that houses several different Native American community organizations. And this is in Duluth. And so that's the context. And there's a story about how we actually found the cover, but that's where it was. And so I'm gonna have that image alongside Tanaya's poem. And the poem is Love Lessons in a Time of Settler Colonialism. Tanaya Winder. I am not murdered, and I'm not missing, but parts of me have disappeared. That's an epigraph by Leanne Simpson. In my poetry workshops, I ask my students, if you had any superhero power, what would it be? All of the Indigenous girls respond, invisibility. They know all too well that some cracks were built just for us to fall through. We live in a world that tries to steal spirits each day. They steal ours by taking us away. From industrial schools to forced simulation, a genocide means removal of those whose birth nations our living threatens. Colonialism has been choking us for generations. I tell my girls, they are vessels of spirit, air to lungs expanding. This world cannot breathe without us. There are days I wish I didn't have to teach these lessons, but as an Indigenous woman, silence is deadening. There is danger in being seen. Our bodies are targets marked for violence. We carry the earth's screams, me too, inside us. A howling wind. Our mothers and their mothers swallowed these bullets long ago. The voices ricochet. I wish I was invisible. I wish I was invisible. I wish I was. Echoes in my eardrums. We all know what it's like to live in fear. Colonialism's bullet sits cocked, waiting behind a finger on trigger. We breathe and speak and sing for survival. We carve out in lines. We write, I know joy. I know pain. I know love. I know love. I know lessons we've carried throughout time. Should I go missing? Don't stop searching. Drag every river until it turns red, and the waters of our names stretch a flood so wide it catches everything, and we find each other, whole and sacred, alive and breathing, and breathing, and breathing.
That is a beautiful poem.
Mm.
And very, very powerful. I think that's an excellent way to begin. You know, what I noticed as I was reading through the book, and what I kind of mentioned before, is that balance of, you know, quiet writing and writing that really speaks loudly of experience and of the issues, and how they both work so well in tandem. And you know, one of those is, I think you're going to probably read both of them, and maybe it would be good to read them both now. Bullet Points by Jericho Brown, and then the other one that I think you know, speaks in a quieter way but just as powerful, is Threat by Kathleen Stancic. So yeah, let's listen to those two, and then we can talk a little bit more about that. And again, if anyone wants to comment or ask questions, feel free to do so in the chat.
And we have a image for both of those, so we need to do a switcheroo midstream.
Okay.
So for Bullet Points, it's the image, page 188, Trayvon Martin icon by Jasmine Iona Brown. Bullet Points by Jericho Brown. I will not shoot myself in the head, and I will not shoot myself in the back, and I will not hang myself with a trash bag. And if I do, I promise you, I will not do it in a police car while handcuffed, or in the jail cell of a town I only know the name of because I have to drive through it to get home. Yes, I may be at risk, but I promise you, I trust the maggots who live beneath the floorboards of my house to do what they must to any carcass more than I trust an officer of the law of the land to shut my eyes like a man of God might, or to cover me with a sheet so clean my mother could have used it to tuck me in. When I kill me, I will do it the same way most Americans do. I promise you, cigarette smoke or a piece of meat on which I choke, or so broke I freeze in one of these winters we keep calling worse. I promise, if you hear of me dead anywhere near a cop, then that cop killed me. He took me from us and left my body, which is, no matter what we've been taught, greater than the settlement a city can pay a mother to stop crying, and more beautiful than a new bullet fished from the folds of my brain. So that's Jericho Brown, Bullet Points, which is the image that we have to go with threat, and which I've got to find, is, where's the page number? It's 178, Wrist Rosary by Tom Kiefer. Okay, and this has an interesting little story about it, the poem that I'm going to read and this image. The poem came to us through open submissions. We gobbled it up. And then she tributes the poem to Tom Kiefer. And Phoebe and I have both come across Tom Kiefer outside of the anthology through he's had several art shows. And I guess we saw some of the work on Facebook. I don't remember where I first saw it. But what Tom Kiefer has been doing is collecting things that people at the border who get snatched up by La Migra and sort of sent away, things that they leave behind. So everything from toothbrushes to articles of clothing and also rosaries. So this poem is called Threat, and this is a photo of one of the rosaries that Tom Kiefer actually found in the desert. And it's by Kathleen Stanek. Somewhere in a detention center along the southern border, a janitor removes rosaries from the trash, photographs them so they will not be forgotten. Discarded, it was said, for the safety of the officers.
Yeah, again, a different kind of poem, a different voice, but just as powerful. And, you know, both of those speak directly to what's happening today. And, you know, especially Jericho Brown's. I think that, you know, sometimes it would be good, I think, to read poems like that at the beginning of a trial, say, that's going on right now, you know, one that might, and maybe you can't really do those things, but certainly it's a very powerful opening for just considering what lies before us.
You know, Christy, because you sort of refer to this thing, the contrast of poems. I'd like to actually read one that has a sort of a contrast within it. That's in the Y section. And this is a poem by Ilya Kaminsky, also one of our more prominent people in the anthology. And what I love about this poem is that it captures the sort of the blindness and weakness of this country in terms of what it sees or chooses not to see or not to hear. And it's called In a Time of Peace. And there's no image for this one. In a Time of Peace by Ilya Kaminsky. Inhabitant of Earth for 40-something years, I once found myself in a peaceful country. I watched neighbors open their phones to watch a cop demanding a man's driver's license. When a man reaches for his wallet, the cop shoots into the car window, shoots. It is a peaceful country. We pocket our phones and go to the dentist, to pick up the kids from school, to buy shampoo and basil. Ours is a country in which a boy shot by the police lies on the pavement for hours. We see in his open mouth the nakedness of the whole nation. We watch others watch. The body of a boy lies on the pavement exactly like the body of a boy. It is a peaceful country, and it clips our citizens' bodies effortlessly, the way the president's wife trims her toenails. All of us still have the hard work of dentist appointments, of remembering to make a summer salad, basil, tomatoes. Oh, it is a joy. Tomatoes, add a little salt. This is a time of peace. I do not hear gunshots, but watch birds splash over the backyards of the suburbs. How bright is the sky as the avenue spins on its axis. How bright is the sky? Forgive me. How bright? Yeah, I think that sort of really, it's something that we really saw unfold last year after the murder of George Floyd, when sort of like after literally centuries, the term white supremacy started to enter sort of ordinary, everyday, mainstream conversation, literally after centuries. And that's kind of like this poem. You have these things going on, and then you have this sort of looking away until, and that's the thing, looking away can only go on for so long. You know, we all risk our humanity and risk our planet itself, right? The health of the planet, if we look away. So yeah, I have a soft spot for that poem.
Yeah, it's kind of like, you know, the pendulum swings, and you, like you say, you sit in such a quiet place where no one wants to look at it, and then it swings way back, and you have to really see the truth of it.
It's actually another way I think that looking away has happened historically and is really being challenged is around the history of children being separated from their parents, which is not, oh, this country is better than this, at the last few years on the border, forgetting the history of slave kids sold away from their parents, of Native American children stolen and put in boarding schools. We have a long, long history of that. And the border crisis is also, it's what's been happening, you know, the explosion of it, the level of the crisis itself is phenomenal. And why is it? You know, let's not look away from what's happening in the countries of origin of why people have to leave. But I have one of the poems in here I mentioned at the beginning, a student of mine from El Centro de la Raza, who has a poem in here. And she was one of those children who lost her parents, though in this case, it was her parents taken away from her at age 4. And I'd like to read that, why it sort of, it seems like appropriate thing following the Ilya Kaminsky poem. And I wanted to say a little bit about the history of this poem too, because we all called her Angel in class. Angelina was 18 when she wrote this poem and a high school student. And her first instinct at the end of class was to sort of, I only have one rule wherever I teach, which is, well, actually it's more of a plea. Don't throw your writing away. Even if you hate it, shove it in a drawer somewhere, but save it, because you never know, things come back, you look at them later and you see something else or whatever. Anyway, on the way out of the class, she rolled it up into a wad and threw it in the wastebasket. And then she saw that I'd seen, and we both dove for it at the same time, and I got it. And she said, "Oh, you can have it." Well, I took it home and typed it and gave it back to her. And she said, "You edited it." And I said, "No, I did not. I typed it up. Here's your original, word for word." That poem wound up on the front page of the Sunday Seattle Times and up on the wall in the Seattle Art Museum. And it was sort of a turnaround moment. But Angelina herself has gone on to become a muralist, quite well known. She's done projects in different parts of the country and in different countries, and is doing work with young people, through art. And it's just kind of wonderful. And this poem was kind of like a bit of a turning point in her sense of worth. So anyway.
Yeah. Is there an image that goes along with this one as well?
One, and it is Families Belong Together on page 82. For the Man Who Is Half of Me by Angelina Villalobos. I always knew my father did not belong. I did not need the television to blemish my mind and condition what my father should look like. My father did not come home with a shirt and tie and briefcase. He came home smelling of the earth and sweat of his manual labor, and his cologne that I would always remember even after he was long gone. He spoke to me in boisterous Spanish. Angelina, mi Angelita. I did not need a thick panel of glass to tell me that my father was untouchable. Even the law agreed. He was meant for Mexico, not the United States. Either that or locked from view. And after both her parents were taken, she never saw them again.
My goodness. Again, all of this just speaks to the importance and the worth of having this out there and making it available to readers, and doing things like this and sharing that work online. I think one of the other things that really spoke to me too was in one of the later sections, the resistance section, and it is the rest as resistance. It's I guess the graphic poem, which now of course I can't find it, but it's just a simple 2-page layout of this graphic poem that really speaks to the simple reminder of how activism is always out there, and there are ways to keep it ever present. And I always think about myself as an activist. I'm not I'm more of, let me be in the background and wash the coffee cups for you and do whatever I can to help you get to the front line, because I'm not much of a frontline person, but that doesn't mean that I don't have any place. And I think that rest and resistance is a piece that explains it, that if you get to that point where you need to step back, that it's okay. It doesn't mean that activism has stopped. So did you find it, what page it's on?
I couldn't. Phoebe might note, and I was flipping through. I didn't see. I know which piece you're talking about.
Which one?
It's the one. Oh, now her name's gone.
Oh, you mean Noelle Franklin, who died?
Yes. Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, I was going to share that story. Noelle, who did this, she's another person who had been struggling for a long time with her own demons with mental illness.
Page 314.
Incredible artist. And I'm so glad that this is in here, because it's sort of, she left a lot of art behind, but this sort of like a lasting legacy. But she died of an accidental overdose last year. And she was really young. But, I mean, so she needed the rest too, desperately. Yeah.
Right. And
Yeah,
then,
that's me in the drawing. That's me in the drawing.
yeah, I don't know. Let me see if I can hold this up so that you can kind of see it. It's hard,
Yeah.
hard to
Yeah.
see it, but it's, you know, the second page is really what's wonderful. And I mean, it's all wonderful, but really what I'm talking about is, you know,
Yeah.
rest as resistance. You can take it to the web. You can take it to the stage. This must be you, Phoebe. You can take it to the streets.
That's Phoebe.
You can
That's
take it
me.
to the page. And then the next page, but if you can take no more, then you can take a break. Use rest as resistance. It keeps us strong and safe.
Yeah.
And it's just that reminder that no matter what, you know, we have to take care of ourselves in order that we can be present again, doing the work again. So, you know, maybe that goes back to your first comment, Anna, about that idea that sometimes we have to take a break from our own writing and do and help bring the work of others. It's giving ourselves that bit of respite so that we can be present again.
Or go do the gardening, or read a good book, or go
Right.
with the dog.
Yeah,
Whatever.
exactly.
I did want to read a couple of poems from the resistance section, and I like to end with hope. So I was going to read one that's I'm going to read "Just Breathe" by Susana Preve Perez, and then my last poem I'll read is the second to last poem in the book. Why Whales Are Back in New York City by Rajiv Mohibir. Oh, wait a minute. Back up. Do I have time to read another real short one?
Oh, definitely.
Yeah,
Yep.
I wanted to read this partly because of, well, mostly because of what's in it. Also, it's from another country. And now I've got to find the page. This is not efficient.
Page 210, I think. 210.
Thank you. It's called Zero Tolerance. And the person that wrote it, Dr. Shahed Youssef, he lives in the UK, and he's a doctor who's been on the front lines all the past year and still, of Pakistani descent, and he works in Birmingham in England. So I love this piece. And I think this is hopeful too, because this is, I think, sort of a guidepost for, you know, how to reach out to people who disagree with us and have vehemently antagonistic views. You shouted that you didn't want a Muslim doctor. I was angry when I said healthcare had zero tolerance for bigotry. You smelt of the iron in your blood and the tin in your hand. I had ketone breath from fasting from Ramadan. My brown hand held a stethoscope over your swastika tattoo. Awkward, I said, and you swallowed hard. The swastika is Indian, I murmured, and could feel you pulling away. I feigned surprise that you had a healthy heart, and you laughed more than you needed to. You're all right, you said. Most humans are, I said, and shook your hand. So now I'll read Susanna's piece. A solo scrub jay perched on a wrinkled orange tree calls out dawn like nails on a chalkboard. I can still remember mornings like symphonies and plump oranges on glossy green. Oakland wakes to a gray brew of pollution and soot. My sister can't stop coughing. A wheeze planted its rusty roots in her once pink lungs. Pesticides drift, settle on a withered hibiscus. Birds fall, bees die. Monsanto, not my saint. Monsanto dances with the devil on a bed of crushed wings, dollars jingling in its pockets. I recycle, reuse, reduce, but what can I do to curb corporate cravings that shoot up towns and rainforests? Greenhouse gases spurting from exit wounds. Who would imagine we'd take to the streets and march for air to breathe and water to drink? Thousands strong, our chants rising like ravens, we march for a future for this sacred earth. We march in the too hot sun, so sweetgrass may always grow. We march lest we leave our children a fractured sphere, and to our grandchildren, nothing but prayers. So I love the tenderness that's in that piece. I mean, you've got all this, you know, the spirit of resistance and determination, but it's also very loving.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'll just read this last one, and then maybe we can just open up a little bit. So this is by Rajiv Mohibir, who is of Indian Hindi descent, but grew up in the Bahamas. I've forgotten, oh, I should know. It will be in his bio. And his name's Rajiv Mohibir. And I have to make sure I get this word pronounced right. If I don't, forgive me. After a century, humpbacks migrate again to Queens. They left due to sewage and white froth banking the shores from polychlorinated biphenyl dumping into the Hudson and winnowing Menhaden schools. But now, grace. Dark bodies of song return. Go to the seaside. Hold your breath. Submerge. A black fluke silhouetted against the Manhattan skyline. Now ice beats doors down on Liberty Avenue to deport. I sit alone on orange A train seats, mouth sparkling from sings. No matter how white supremacy gathers at the sidewalks, flows down the streets, we still beat our drums wild. Watch their false god statues prostrate to black and brown hands. They won't keep us out, though they send us back. Our songs will pierce the dark fathoms. Behold the miracle. What once was lost now leaps before you.
Oh, I love those last two lines.
Yeah.
That is a great poem to end the readings with. Again, if you've got questions or you want to make comments, you can do so in the chat. I know earlier there was a comment by Mariana just about appreciating this book so much, you know, and how it echoes the world. So just thanking you for bringing it into the world. And we really just have about 5 minutes left. You know, what I'd love to know, beyond this book and beyond Words from the Cafe, you know, it sounds like Raven Chronicles Press really has a great mission of, you know, kind of similar to Hidden Timber Books, bringing the voices that are often overlooked into the reading space and out into the world. And I wondered if, well, first of all, I would love to see this book on college campuses. You know, a lot of times, you know, colleges have, like where I work, they have I forgot what they call it, a common read. They have the common read at each beginning academic year. And this would be such a cool book. In fact, maybe I don't know who I'm supposed to contact, but maybe I will try to share that, because, you know, it's just full of diversity. It's full of great conversation points. So it would be an excellent book for that kind of thing. If anyone out there in the audience today has any connections in that way, certainly spread the word, right? And I guess, I would love to know about Raven Chronicles, that literary organization, and the press itself, what, just briefly what the mission is and what we might look forward to reading down the line in the next months or years.
So Phoebe, I think you should answer that.
We are just releasing this week this book. This is a pre-sale copy of Spirits of the Ordinary by one of our founders, Kathleen Akala. So that's coming out May 10th. And it's this kind of story of Mexico in the late 19th century and the hidden Jews in Mexico. And it's a very interesting story. But we're still kind of finding our way as a press, as Anna can let you know. But we've been publishing since 1991 as a literary magazine, and we've just kind of started just doing books, and we've had several great anthologies out, and we're kind of like put all the magazines we published, we're kind of putting 3 or 4 anthologies together of all the highlighted work. And we published so many artists. That's one of our been strong things, is the visual artists that we have highlighted and published. Anna, do you have anything to add?
Well, not really. I mean, I think I already mentioned that doing a second release of Words from
Right.
the Cafe.
Which I'm working on right now.
And it's coming out as an ebook too, which will be neat. That's a new thing for Raven. And I think the anthology is coming out as an ebook, right, Phoebe?
Which anthology?
This one.
Oh, yes. Well, that's going to take a while, because with a book with that many photos, it's hard to do an ebook. It's very hard, because
Right.
it's like a college text, and it's much harder to do an ebook, but we are working on it.
Great. Excellent. Margaret is asking about the literary magazines that you publish. Are they all called Raven Chronicles, or?
Well, we stopped in 2018. We did our last one, so now we're just
Okay.
doing books, and there were literary magazines. Yes,
I've
we're
got
going to
one.
have them all on our website eventually.
Here's one of the last editions,
Yeah.
which came out in a book form, but
Wow.
it's the journal. So it has Raven Chronicles. They all have the name Raven Chronicles Journal, but then they have the name of a theme.
And this was our very last one, last call, Raven Chronicles. Crows and ravens we've kind of highly featured in our books.
Okay. That's great. And you said they're available on your website?
Yeah, I'm starting to put all of them. I'm going back to 1991. That's a lot, but we're starting to put all of them on the website.
Okay. And Carletta says that Seattle Public Library has copies of those to check out, which is great.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
There are in some libraries, especially in the Pacific Northwest, and we're working on sending them to other libraries throughout the country.
Oh, good. Wonderful. Well, if you don't mind dropping your website in the chat box one more time, that way people can take a look at all of those books, the anthologies and the previous journals. And then Hidden Timber Press is featuring Kathleen Akala's book as well, coming up in June. So we'll see you guys again.
Right.
Which will be really, really nice. And I'm always impressed by the covers. Certainly this one, and Kathleen Alcala's book is beautiful. And then, just showing those journals. I mean, I love pairing art with literature. I think they just, especially when it's a great, perfect pairing, it just really enhances the experience of reading and reading the work and experiencing it. That's all. So thank you so much for sharing all that information, for Anna for being here and reading all that work, sharing the images as well. Margaret, I know you're asking about a cover. Are you talking about showing the cover of the anthology again, or a cover of one of the journals? If you can just pop that answer into, or we can show them all. So here's the anthology, and Kathleen Akala's book. We've got the journal. So Anna has a picture of one of the journals, and Phoebe is holding up a picture of Spirits of the Ordinary.
Mm-hmm. It's for pre-sale right now on our website.
Okay. And that book comes out in June? Is that
May
correct? Or in
10th.
May?
May
May.
10th.
Okay.
But
So
it's for
coming up.
sale right now on our website, pre-sale.
Excellent. Well, everyone, thank you again for being here on a Saturday afternoon. It was such a wonderful discussion. And I hope that we get to see you again. Hidden Timber Books continues to have different events coming down the line, including another one with Raven Chronicles. And we hope to see you there. If you want to go to our YouTube site, you will be able to find the recorded link, the link to the recording for this reading, as well as all the others. And as we love to do, help spread the work and word of all these wonderful books. So thank you again, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you, Christy.
Thank you, Christy.